Don't give her another bite. She hasn't paid for anything. The manager's harsh voice echoed through the small roadside diner, freezing every customer in place. Outside, rain lashed the windows while an elderly woman in a soaked brown coat quietly lowered her head, gripping an empty coffee cup to hide her trembling hands. No one knew that within the next 24 hours, the man humiliating her would lose everything he had built. Just then, Daniel Carter pushed open the door after a 12-hour warehouse shift. His wallet held barely enough for one bowl of chicken soup and 2 bread rolls, his final dollars before payday. At home, his 9-year-old daughter Lily was waiting, believing her father would return with dinner as promised. Daniel noticed the frightened woman being ordered to leave. Without hesitation, he carried his tray to her table and gently placed it in front of her. "Please," he said with a warm smile, "eat while it's still hot." The entire diner stared in disbelief. The manager laughed. "So now you're feeding strangers with money you don't even have?" Daniel calmly replied, "Tonight, she deserves this meal more than I do." What nobody in that room realized was that the woman wasn't homeless at all, and Daniel's simple act of kindness was about to change every life in that diner forever. The woman looked at the steaming bowl as though no one had shown her kindness in years. "I can't take your dinner," she whispered. Daniel smiled softly. "My daughter always says food tastes better when it's shared." Across the diner, several customers exchanged uncomfortable glances, but the manager, Richard Hayes, folded his arms with a mocking grin. "Playing the hero won't change your empty wallet," he sneered. Daniel ignored him and quietly slid the spoon closer to the woman. Before sitting down, he wrapped one bread roll in a napkin and slipped it into his jacket pocket for Lily. The woman noticed the careful gesture. "Someone's waiting for you?" she asked. "My little girl," Daniel replied. "She's expecting me to come home with dinner. She'll understand if I bring a little less tonight." For the first time, the woman's eyes filled with tears. She realized this wasn't generosity from a wealthy man, it was sacrifice from someone who had almost nothing. What Daniel didn't know was that the woman had come to that diner for one reason only, to discover how ordinary people were treated when they appeared powerless. And Richard Hayes had just made the biggest mistake of his career. Richard stepped closer, his polished shoes stopping inches from Daniel's table. "Take your tray and leave," he ordered. "You're disturbing my customers." Daniel remained calm. "I'm only helping someone eat." A man near the window chuckled. Another customer quietly began recording with his phone. The woman slowly lifted the spoon, but before she could take another bite, Richard reached for the tray. "I said she's not welcome here." Daniel gently placed his hand on the edge of the table. "Please, let her finish her meal." The quiet confidence in his voice made the entire diner fall silent. The woman looked at Daniel with growing admiration. She had spent the entire day visiting different locations owned by the same restaurant chain. Every stop had ended the same way, with rejection, suspicion, or humiliation. But this exhausted warehouse worker was the first person who had treated her like a human being instead of a burden. Richard laughed coldly. "You really think one bowl of soup changes anything?" Daniel looked him in the eyes. "No. But it can change someone's worst day." The woman lowered her gaze, hiding the tears forming in her eyes. In that moment, she made a silent decision. By tomorrow morning, everyone responsible for treating people without compassion would be held accountable. The next morning, Daniel's phone rang before sunrise. "Daniel." "I'm sorry," his supervisor said quietly. "A video from the diner is everywhere. Management wants you suspended until they review what happened." Daniel closed his eyes. The viral clip showed only the argument, not the insults, not the meal he had given away, and not the manager's cruel behavior. As if things couldn't get worse, another call came minutes later. It was Family Services. "Mr. Carter, because of your recent suspension, we'll need updated proof of stable employment before closing your case." Daniel's heart sank. Across the room, Lily stood silently in her pajamas, clutching the drawing she had made for him the night before. She looked at his worried face and asked the question every parent fears. "Dad, are they going to take me away?" Daniel immediately knelt and hugged her tightly. "Never stop believing in me," he whispered, fighting back tears. At that same moment, miles away in a glass office overlooking the city, the mysterious woman removed her disguise and watched the restaurant's complete security footage. This time, nothing had been edited. She saw Daniel buying his own meal, giving it away without hesitation, protecting a stranger's dignity, and quietly accepting humiliation without fighting back. She turned toward her assistant and said only 6 words. "Call every board member. Right now." The room fell silent. Justice had finally begun. By noon, the company's executive boardroom was filled with lawyers, senior managers, and regional directors. Richard Hayes sat confidently at the table, convinced the meeting was about protecting the company's reputation. Then the doors opened. The woman from the diner walked in wearing an elegant business suit. The room instantly fell silent as everyone stood. "Good afternoon, Ms. Victoria Lang." Richard's face turned pale. The woman he had mocked the night before wasn't homeless at all. She was the owner and CEO of the entire restaurant chain. Without saying a word, Victoria pressed a button on the remote. The large screen displayed the complete security footage from the diner. This version showed everything. Richard insulting her. Daniel offering his own meal, customers laughing, and finally Richard trying to force her out. The room became painfully quiet. Richard quickly stood. "Ma'am, the video online doesn't show the full context." Victoria looked directly at him. "Exactly," she replied. "That's why we're watching the truth." The final clip played. Everyone watched Daniel gently help clean the spilled soup instead of arguing after being humiliated. Several board members lowered their heads in embarrassment. Victoria turned toward Richard. "You didn't just disrespect one customer," she said calmly. "You destroyed the values this company was built on." Richard realized, far too late, that his career had just come to an end. Richard tried one last time to defend himself. "She wasn't a paying customer," he argued. "I was simply enforcing company policy." Victoria slowly shook her head. "No, Richard. You were enforcing your own lack of compassion." She displayed another set of documents on the screen, internal reports showing that Richard had ignored employee complaints, wasted perfectly good food, and rejected several requests to donate extra meals to local shelters. Then she held up a file. This complaint came from Daniel Carter, 6 weeks ago. Richard's expression froze. Daniel had reported that fresh food was being thrown away while struggling families were turned away. Instead of investigating, Richard had buried the report to protect his performance numbers. Victoria closed the file. "From this moment, you're terminated. Effective immediately." Security officers stepped forward. The board approved every decision without a single objection. But Victoria wasn't finished. She announced a new policy for every restaurant in the company. Starting today, every location will serve one free meal each day to anyone in genuine need. No questions. No humiliation. The room filled with quiet applause. Then she looked at her assistant. "And one more thing. I want Daniel Carter brought here today. Not for another interview, but to thank the man who reminded this company what kindness truly looks like." That evening, Daniel arrived at the company's headquarters, still wearing his faded work jacket. He looked around nervously, certain there had been some mistake. When the elevator doors opened, Victoria Lang walked toward him with a gentle smile. "You came," she said. Daniel nodded. "Your assistant said you wanted to see me. I wanted to thank you." She handed him a folder. Inside was an official letter restoring his job with full back pay, a promotion to community outreach director, full health benefits, and a salary that would finally give Lily a secure future. Daniel stared at the papers in disbelief. "I didn't help you for a reward," he said quietly. Victoria smiled. "I know. That's exactly why you deserve this." Just then, Lily ran into the room after being brought in by Victoria's assistant. She hugged her father tightly before turning to Victoria. "You're the lady Dad shared his dinner with." Victoria nodded with watery eyes. "Yes, and your father reminded me that kindness is worth more than any fortune." Lily reached into her backpack, pulled out a homemade friendship bracelet, and placed it in Victoria's hand. "My dad says good people should never eat alone." Victoria accepted the tiny bracelet like it was priceless. In that moment, everyone in the room understood that the greatest gift wasn't money or power. It was a heart that chose compassion, even when it had almost nothing left to give. 6 months later, every restaurant in the company's chain had something new near its entrance. A simple wooden sign that read, "If you're hungry, you're welcome here. No payment required. No questions asked." The idea spread across the state, inspiring countless other restaurants to launch similar programs. Daniel no longer worried about losing his daughter or choosing between rent and groceries. Every evening, he was home in time to have dinner with Lily, the promise he had almost lost. Victoria often visited different locations without announcing who she was. But now, instead of searching for problems, she searched for kindness. One rainy afternoon, she walked into the same diner where everything had begun. The atmosphere was completely different. Employees greeted every customer with respect, and no one was judged by their clothes or their wallet. On the wall hung a small framed photo of Daniel and Lily with a simple message beneath it. "One act of kindness can feed more than hunger, it can restore humanity." Daniel smiled as he watched another family receive a warm meal without embarrassment. Sometimes, changing the world doesn't begin with power. It begins with one person choosing kindness when everyone else chooses silence. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Daniel's place? Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories like this. See you in the next video.